This is a program called When I Was Hungry. Emmah's Garden is an inspiring story of a young mother in Kenya who challenges the norms of her society. When Emmah studied to be an agricultural scientist, she already knew that she wanted to help her village grow plants so that they could afford to feed and educate their children. She's passionate about showing young girls they can dream big to help the community. Mark Colville is tackling homelessness in the US from his own backyard in the most extraordinary way. We then meet Herbert Klein, who leads a deaf awareness campaign for access to sign language in schools across Indonesia. And finally, sociotheologian Walter Hidalgo celebrates 50 years of hip-hop, which he interprets to mean the higher infinite power healing our people. And he asks the church to connect with the marginalized.
I'm Emmah Gesare, Kisigal, and I'm the Kenyan coordinator of Emmah's Garden. And also I'm a trained agricultural scientist. And about Emmah's Garden, it's a non-profit organization which helps to support and empower women, basically by venturing into farming, teaching them new methods of farming. About the motivation to start Emmah's Garden, it is the urge of passion of farming which I had, and which I saw it is good so that I can transform the livelihood of my village mates. And my passion about farming started way back when I was a young girl. And growing up in a village setup, my parents used to practice small-scale farming. Yeah, that is how I started loving farming. And it happened, I went to college and I did agriculture education and extension. I saw it's good so that I can come back to the village so that I can empower women, I can support them, I can teach them new methods of farming. Approaching the village elders, it was challenging. Actually, I can talk about demeaning and very frustrating because they didn't believe a small woman like me, I can do such a thing. And through the doubts which they had, I saw it's good not to speak more, but to practice and do practically what they can see and believe on me. And that is when now I started from the kitchen gardens and demonstrating farm. You can see about the spider plant, which already the women has done it. For this plant, the spider plant, actually this is the nutritious African vegetables which most of the women like. For instance, this plant, it is recommendable for the people who are breastfeeding, because when you eat this plant, the mothers who breastfeed, they can have enough milk for the infants to feed on. And also the importance of this spider plant, it helps in eyesight. It helps in the eyesight, and also it is the main nutritious plant in the African vegetables which we have. And about the growing about this Spider-Man, you don't put it on the nursery. You prepare the land, you do scatter planting, scattering the seeds all over. And it is easy to maintain because once it has started to emerge from the soil, only what you need to do it is to spray about the fertilizers, the organic one, into the soil, and after 2 to 3 weeks you can get now the spider plant to harvest. And through the first demonstration which I did, I remember I planted the spinach. They now started believing in me because they saw I can do it. Young girls can make it. Not only even the political people can help with the society, but even young girls who had big dreams, big ideas can help the village. What made me to push this, what motivated me about this, all the activities which I'm doing about farming? Number one, I got a good support system because there are people who are ready now to help me now, who are the family, the members of Emmah's Garden. I can talk about the likes of Caleb, who is the president of Emmah's Garden. We have Clyde, who is now the one managing our website, social media. And we have Clyde, who helped us to register Emmah's Garden in the US. Those are the people who motivated me because they gave me support, which I really want. And also not forgetting Alois, who is another, who we are coordinating with here in Kenya. Yeah, that makes us dream every day, dream big, dream to help more women, dream to impart the lives of many people. Yeah, not only in our village, but in the neighboring villages. Actually, about helping these women, first of all, they didn't have land where to practice this farming. As Emmah's Garden team, we decided we can help lease the land so that they can have a space, so that they can plant the crops, they can practice this farming and help their families. We have leased hectares of 4 hectares of land, each group. Currently we are having 5 groups. Each group is having 1 hectare to practice the farming. And another thing, apart from the leasing the land, we do provide the seeds, we do provide the fertilizers so that they can start the farming. And also, apart from that, because I'm a trained agricultural scientist, I do help them, I do teach them the new methods of farming. Growing up, my mother used to be a housewife, and generally in Africa, they talk about women are the ones who are supposed to take care of the home. The men are supposed to go out there to search for food so that they can bring to the women. And I saw it, women, they have not given us the opportunity to express, to talk about the talents which we have, to talk about education. I wanted that the ancestral thing which they used to quote, women are used to take care of the families, they are supposed to be home, so that I can delete that what can I call it? Mentality of people saying women are not supposed to work, women are supposed to be home. That is why I wanted to empower them. I wanted young girls in the village to see what I'm doing. I wanted myself as Emmah to be the role model to the young girls who are growing, so that they can believe they can do it. If Emmah has done it, I'm a mother of one, I've done it. Why does those young girls who have not yet family cannot do it? I wanted to be a role model. I wanted to empower them so that they can have their own, what they call their own, so that they can also provide for their families. If I can talk about the number, is about very many, because when I post anything on social media talking about women empowering, everybody is interested to know me. Everyone is interested to be like me. But for now, the number which I've helped in the village, we have 5 groups, each having 10 women, meaning we have 50 women currently who are under Emmah's Garden. Actually, I don't have specific, but in our village, the women whom I give the priority more are the women maybe they have children, they don't have land, they are not able to provide food on the table, they are not able to feed their children, they are not able to pay school fees or even cater for hospital bills. Those are the women which we give the first priority so that they can be able to provide food, they can be able to pay bills, they can be able to pay even school fees. About the sustainability of these women to this Emmah's Garden project, number one, they have gained the skills which I've taught them. They have known the time for planting, time for harvesting, what fertilizer is supposed to be applied to a certain crop. They can be able now to plant at their own and harvest at their own. And another thing about the harvesting, I have taught them about the financial discipline, financial advice I have given them, whereby you talk about the profits which they get from selling the produce, they can plow them back to the farm without depending on Emmah giving them seeds. That is how they have sustained themselves.
How has this project benefited you since you joined Emmah's Garden?
Korwa swete kiombe kia Emmah's Garden na kikonya ropo konya Emmah's Garden.
Emmah's Garden yankonyire asenge nchona amanyite iguru y'oburimi obo bono ikangwa obungaini ngataka kulima ngataka ikansira ikangwa obuyo ntare konyora igansira nkanyora obutu igantebi ngataka kulima linagu kere nalima linagu eri nkanyora naoniri ese naremeire nkanyora ndi bitoki nekonyera nakonya n'abana eke nakonyira abana narue efisi netinde natumia nyumba kogora esukari esabuni paka goikera iga yansukiria saa tambe bakangoteba nga mbuya mona aseng'encho ya Emmah's Garden yansukiria saa tamba aseng'encho na ng'ainire bono nkonyora ndi ching'eni naria naende nkonyora ndi ching'eni naonia nekonyera ase obugima bwane naende nasukirare asa tambe.
How was your life before the project and now?
Korwa swete Emmah's Garden ikiombe kia Emmah's Garden na kibomwa bwa bwa renge na ndi buna bono bwa swete Emmah's Garden na kibore bono mboche njete gose na kibore
Korwa na gaswete Emmah's Garden ndoje na beire nga na triste na onjoleiri aseng'encho ekerenta abwate project yeyu kende ngeyo na abwata triste wona kere na achira ase Emmah's Garden yansukirie nkonyora nde kende gose support kere ase nyumba ni familia yane na buremeru bwanyeni mbo iyo na kende yonsi ndatake maybe korwa ase omugondo nabo gekonsukia igo nasukire korwa so emirimo ya Emmah's Garden naende bado ndoche nga gochimutwe nabo nda benefit mono kubwa gwetani bono.
What can you advise other women out there?
na kiura tebya bangina bandi bataraswe kiombe kia Emmah's Garden.
Emmah's Garden ne kiombe keosira abangina ase enjere yemo y'oburemi. Emmah's Garden ne kiombe kero giachagete ase seitogaiga giatokonyete abande ntwabwate mugundo gogosimeka ching'eni gosendagire nde yonsi kegatosira ase ogotonyorera enchira yokonyora omugondo gogosimeka ebimeri byaito buna ching'eni ekero twachakirete ching'eni twanyora naintu ching'eni twaria twanyora ching'eni chiri twaoniri twanyora ebesa yatokonya. Emmah's Garden ngia tutabororete buna intu abang'ina abande twarenga aboro gogosimeka ebiticha ekagera na intu togakwa ne chinguru na ekero tukumira nase kiombe kega twakwaniranire twaina no basemi gogosimeka na abande baitoni go bari mbamanyete gosimeka ching'eni ekagera tukanyora basemi obonge bogosimeka ching'eni echiga na inde tugaba n'omukia ekagera kegatoimukia igoro tukarwa korwa ase ching'eni twasimikire mbake bituma twanyorire chinguru twanyorire chibesa nainde giatokonyire twanyarire koba tokorwera nona abana school fees igo asobwenge Emmah's Garden ne kiombe kia abang'ina baminto tigatobwaterane ase ogosirana gwetera ase Emmah's Garden.
I'm really excited about the opportunity to say a few words about human rights in the light of faith and reality in the world today. This month is the 75th anniversary of the UN Universal Declaration on Human Rights. The UN did this evaluation of U.S. cities, particularly looking at how poor people are treated, and particularly people without homes are treated. And what they found was a plethora of laws, municipal laws throughout the country that criminalize homelessness.
People at a homeless encampment in New Haven are being evicted. Residents say they have the right to live there and have nowhere else to go.
In New Haven, they arrest you for being homeless.
I've come to realize that even the word homeless is it's not helpful as a descriptive for people, okay? What we have in the city of New Haven are economic refugees, people who have been excluded from the economy.
I wasn't always homeless. My husband and I, we were previously dairy farmers. A lot of us work in this community. I work with several businesses in New Haven, and my husband as well. And there are so many people, and it's not that average everyday criminal or drug addict. It's families, and it's individuals who had just had a tough time and are trying to start over.
Our economic refugees are misperceived as homeless people, right? And a homeless person is a problem to be solved. It's not a person, okay? It's not a neighbor. That's not even a family member. A homeless person is a statistic among a very unpleasant reality that most of us don't like to think about, especially in New Haven. I think there are many, I think the prevailing opinion about improving the quality of life in this city has to do with hiding the poor.
Cast aside being told you can't sleep on a bench, being told you have too much stuff, you have to go, and they don't want you around. They don't want you visible. You're supposed to be invisible all the time, and if you're visible, you're a criminal. And if you're a criminal, you go to jail.
It's very clear that that homelessness brings with it this stigma that depersonalizes people. At the root of this depersonalization is the failure to recognize that people have a right to take refuge somewhere, that they need a legally sanctioned place to be. When you deny people that, you really do deny them the status of personhood, and then all bets are off.
I was living in a tent by the side of the road in Brantford, and it wasn't much, but that was my little home. And when I was chased away from it, it led to a very serious suicide attempt, to be honest, because I took the message as, there is nowhere for you in this world. You have no home. Well, you're not even allowed to be beside the road. Just go, disappear, be gone. And that's how it felt, and that's how I took it.
A real guiding sort of parable for me became this, the parable of Lazarus and the rich man. Lazarus is literally laying on the sidewalk in the front door of this rich man, and the rich man has to step over him every day, right? As the parable goes, they end up meeting in the afterlife. Lazarus is in heaven, right? And there's a chasm there, and then the rich man is now suffering. And he asks Lazarus to just give him a cup of water. And the response from God is, well, there's this chasm there. And literally, as the parable describes it, the chasm was created by this man's failure to provide a place for Lazarus in life.
500,000 plus people sleep on our streets on any given night. More than 200,000 of them are unsheltered. It is a crisis. It is an epidemic.
The problem of Lazarus in our society today is not just that that there's no legally sanctioned place for Lazarus to be, but also the spaces in which the Lazaruses among us are forced to take refuge then are becoming criminalized, okay?
Tonight, homelessness is a growing concern across the country, including right here in our state.
A federal survey finds the unhoused population in Connecticut jumped up this year. Advocates in New Haven say the situation is getting worse, calling it a crisis. Tent City off Ella T. Grasso Boulevard in New Haven. They say the camp has been here for years. Now they're being evicted.
It's actually pretty devastating. We put a lot of work into the camp.
We're not hurting anybody. We got rid of the riffraff. We cleaned up what you wanted to clean up. We went above and beyond.
Mark Colville has worked in homeless outreach for decades and argues residents have a right to live there under the UN Declaration on Human Rights.
Am I saying people should be able to run wild or sleep wherever they want? Absolutely not. In fact, that's what the city is saying. By denying any place for them to be, they have to pick a place, okay? What we're saying is designate a place.
If someone sets up somewhere, as she said, if someone sets up somewhere and they want to just move you, they don't just move you, they destroy everything you got. You lose your identity, your identification, your personal things that might be important to you, all right? Everything, it doesn't matter. They tore Tent City down after 3 years being open and was rude. All they did was come in there with a great big old grab truck and snatch stuff up. People lost a lot, and it was unfair.
When the state denies a person a legally sanctioned place to be, then they're essentially denying people the status of personhood. Now that really got us thinking as people of hospitality here. You know, we're part of the Catholic worker movement here, and we've been involved in providing hospitality for people, you know, from a faith-based perspective, and really kind of reflecting on, you know, what would Jesus have us do, you know?
Decided to declare our backyard a human rights zone.
Mark Colville has opened his home at the Amistad to Tent City neighbors, joining others who have lived here for a year.
The Catholic worker, we're people of hospitality, right? Well, traditionally, we've always interpreted that as, you know, opening our doors. And we've done that. You know, we open our doors for meals. We bring people in. We let people live with us while they're transitioning from, you know, from homelessness into housing.
We had known Mark and had come here for breakfast, and we're always interested in coming and being a part of trying to build a community here. And they had already started and had some really great ideas, and we wanted to be a part of that. So for me, the most important part was that I could stay with my family. You know, my husband's all I have. And if I were to go to, say, a shelter, we would be separated. And to me, that would just be horrible, because that's my entire support system.
What we decided was that we should set up in our own backyard, on our own property, we should set up what a tent city could look like if there was, you know, running water, if there was food and the ability to cook food, if there was heat and you know, bathroom facilities, showers, laundry, etc. You know, what we wanted to model to the city and to the mayor's office what this could look like. We put that human rights zone sign on our own backyard, and we started inviting people into the backyard.
In the backyard here, I have a little 6x6 wooden hut, and it's really tiny, but you know what? It's mine. Like Rico was saying when I first came here, you know, Mark said, we're giving you a piece of land, and it's really powerful, in my opinion, when you have your own space that you're free to control. Even if it's a small space, it's a powerful thing for your mental health when it's like, this is mine, you know?
We realized immediately that as soon as you give people their own private space, you know, their own piece of land, it changes everything. It changes their whole outlook and the whole dynamic of how they use space. When you have a piece of land, that makes you a neighbor, okay? It makes you a neighbor, which means that now you're responsible for a neighborhood. So this is the Amistad Catholic Worker. We've been here since 1994, and the door has always been open here to the neighborhood. And as we've been saying in the back, we now have another neighborhood. We have the Rosette Neighborhood Village. So the Amistad Catholic Worker house is here on Rosette Street. We've been here now for almost 30 years. And this is our human rights zone. We're coming into the backyard here, as we've posted here a sign indicating that we have claimed this as a human rights zone. Again, we're trying to model what the city should be doing in order to welcome our houseless neighbors back into the status of neighbor. So welcome. As I said, when people join us here, they're given a piece of land on which to put a tent, and that makes them a neighbor. As you can see, they've all built their own homes here.
There is hope here, this environment, and it's not just that I have hope, it's that the environment and the community has hope, I think. And so I think that's the biggest thing it means, aside from just having a place to call my own.
I feel like it's a great opportunity to have, and I feel really, really happy being here.
The most important thing is it really is the feeling of community and like everyone else said, giving back to people who are in the same predicament we are, or in similar situations. And I think that's a big part of what we're trying to do here is just, if you don't have a spot, we'll find you one, and there's a big part of our community here that, are really trying to reach out and help a lot of other people.
Our hope is that by this Thanksgiving, again, before another harsh winter sets in, that we're going to be able to replace all of these dwellings, mostly tents, with tiny homes. And not only is that going to be more impervious to weather and such, but I mean there is a qualitative difference when you are able to walk through a door and lock it behind you. Okay, the reality is that you don't have that with a tent, and we're going to be able to provide heat and even cooling, cooling units as well in these things. There'll be storage for your stuff, comfortable beds, electricity. We're even looking at, putting solar panels on top of them. These are literal game changers for people who are having to deal with homelessness. And contrary to some of the myths that are out there about homelessness, people are fighting tooth and nail to get out of homelessness. And this is a micro neighborhood. I mean, in a very real sense, the people that are living here are no longer homeless. Okay, and so again, from there, they have 2 feet on the ground from which they can start fighting their way out of poverty, right? And so, so that's the model that we're looking at here. And again, these tiny homes are essential to to making that work.
For them to open up their yard and offer this, and even try to get this built, is what 9 out of 10 humans should be.
And I think the tiny homes, yes, they may be small, but it's yours. It's everything you need right there. It's private. It's safe and sanitary, and all these things that a lot of people take for granted and a lot of us don't have access to. Like Mark says, we're turning people back into neighbors, and you can definitely see that here.
Having a tiny home is not only just a place to live, it's a place you feel safe. It's a place you feel secure, and this can be better for me.
For me, though, that's the biggest thing, is the little houses mean hope. It's hope for, a better tomorrow, and that's kind of what we're trying to build on.
People, the neighborhood at large loves this, okay? And it's an example of how, a community can come together, a neighborhood can come together and and solve this problem. In the backyard, people are starting to pay forward the hospitality that we initially offered them. So it's a beautiful thing, and encourage people to come and check it out. All the things that you and I take for granted that we can do in private, from everything from going to the bathroom to cleaning ourselves to eating, etc., to even storing our stuff. People who are homeless have to do all this in public. It's useful maybe to kind of take that to our prayer, take that to our spiritual life and say, well, what should my life then look like in terms of trying to help find a place for these folks.
Herbert Klein works in Indonesia, where cultural awareness of the challenges of deafness are poorly understood. He aims to give the deaf the human rights of education, language, independence and employment, and to persuade his government to accept the sign language which Indonesian deaf people use.
Hello. For the past 2 months, I've been in Denpasar in Bali. Today, I went to a museum. It tells you the story of Bali's history, how it became independent from the Netherlands in 1945. After years of diplomacy, they finally won their independence. Yes. I arrived here in May. We had about 25 workshops in some of the islands. I met with some members of the government to explore the mental health issues deaf people most needed support with. We met a lot of deaf people. They shared with us their lives, mental health issues, a poor cultural awareness of deafness. And they also shared a lot of their frustration. The main thing they need is support from other countries. Also, most important, they need the opportunity to develop learning through a natural sign language. It's essential they develop real language so that they can develop their thinking to more conceptual, abstract levels. Many need professional mental health support, such as counselling and talking therapy, so they need more professionals with sign language. There is a need for greater deaf awareness throughout society, so I hope I can continue my work here in Indonesia. For me, there are 3 major worries. Number 1 is education. We interviewed 700 deaf people. The sign language they use in schools is based on spoken language and isn't a natural deaf sign language at all. It's imposed by the government and is not the language that the deaf community uses. So they learn almost nothing at school. The teachers give them about an hour of teaching and then leave them to fend for themselves. Most of them are physically abused. Almost all deaf agreed that they hadn't learnt anything at school. The deaf community accept it as normal to be treated with disrespect and to be excluded. It's only when they leave school and meet other deaf people with Besindo, which is an Indonesian sign language, that they realise that there is another way. Then they learn very quickly. It's essential for their full psychological development. Besindo is similar to our British Sign Language. My second concern is the family. A lot of families who have deaf children, and even adults, keep them under firm control and keep them at home. In effect, they are treated as non-persons. Deaf people who've been able to develop their potential by using Besindo are trying to encourage families to allow deaf children and adults to develop their independence. It is difficult. Deaf people should be given the opportunity to show that the deaf way of life is different and can also be very positive. My third concern is employment. There are a few deaf people who have work, but most of them, about 70%, don't. Society doesn't believe the deaf are capable of working. Well, I've learned a lot from my time here. I found much happiness spending time with some very special people. I know that by challenging cultural norms and with practical support, we will achieve a better future for deaf people in Indonesia. Thank you.
Give it up for Hidalgo!
I think when we talk about hip hop and spirituality, I don't like to bifurcate the two. I don't like to put them in separate categories. They both complement each other. Spirituality is not housed in just one particular church or religion. It moves and wheels through human beings, particularly those that are suffering in this world. When you look at the spiritual leaders like Gandhi, when you look at Jesus, when you look at Buddha, who stripped away his riches so he could walk amongst the poor, when you think about the scriptures such as, when I was hungry, did you feed me? When I was in jail, did you visit me? These are things that develop and cultivate hip-hop because it comes from the struggle. It comes from burnt homes and divested neighborhoods, people that were suffering, and from that came a beautiful thing. From that, like Tupac said, when I'm walking down these concrete jungles, a beautiful flower comes out of them cracks. So spirituality and hip-hop, they in love with each other, they dance with each other, they hip-hopping with each other. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in God's green earth. My name is Walter Hidalgo, and I'm from New York in the United States of America. I'm grateful to be here, to be invited to share my story and some insight around the church and human rights. I could be summed up in just a couple of titles: father, educator, coach, artist, and world traveler. One of the ways I sort of show that is through the work that I did as part of my graduate and postgraduate studies, where I focused on the spirituality of hip hop. And I've had the honor and pleasure to do that all over the world by asking thousands of people, is hip hop spiritual? And it's by the Kairos moment, I would say, that it is this year, as I record this video for you all, it is hip hop's 50th year anniversary. 50 years our culture has helped us. And when people ask me, what is hip hop? It's higher infinite power healing our people. I believe that to my core because I've seen it all over the world. Just here in New York, we have the longest running open mic event called End of the Week. They use some of their funds to help a lot of youth organizations all over the planet. I think about the young people in Colombia and South America and how they use emceeing and dancing to recruit young people who would otherwise join narcos or gangs in the city. Or be it, hip hop groups that consist of both Palestinian and Jewish brothers and sisters, just as a way to kind of add peaceful resolution to an ongoing conflict. And I think that speaks to a lot of why I made the connection between hip hop and even the church. Because the church is beyond the four walls. That's the title of my book, Beyond the Four Walls, The Rise of Ministry and Spirituality of Hip Hop, because hip hop as a culture has shown me and millions all over the world that a church is one that goes out to the community, because the community is the church. And I think that's a great segue to get into this conversation around human rights. because human rights are the right to be human, right? And I believe that we're going through a huge shift in our world with the decline of young adults in 2012 attending church and faith in the United States. We were also seeing the rise of social media. In 2003, 2003 is when Facebook started, and from there was the snowball effect that eventually led us to 2012. The Mayas were not warning us, they were telling us spiritually that there's going to be a reawakening, not the end of the world. So in 2012, while young adults left the church, we saw the rise of the internet and social media, and that has been a huge vehicle that has been kind of propelling our young adults as someone who works with young people. And that's really, I think, is important when we talk about the ever-evolving church and what it means to include the rights of humans within the church. To not get too theological, that is my background. I'm a socio-theologian, but I feel that, many of us Christians believe that Jesus was both human and God, right? God, Emmanuel, God is with us, revealed himself to us also in the form of a human who had emotions, who had dreams and ideas. But we also see that at a macro level with God, the divine, who even throughout all throughout Old Testament and the New Testament showed us what it means to have human rights, the right to be human. We've seen it through the prophets, through the saints. Really, they are the best of the human experience. And the church is a great example of that. I just got back from doing an immersion trip. So one of the many hats that I do is I work with the Maryknoll Fathers and Brothers, which is a U.S. Catholic Foreign Missionary Society of America. And one of the things I do is I accompany groups to attend our immersion trips, where they get immersed into the contextual realities of the place, in this case, Guatemala, its history, its politics, the influences of the church teaching, and different faiths, and also what kind of action came out of that. So immediately, just in Guatemala, I think of, Bishop Girardi, whose testimony, which turned into a book, Nunca Más, really propelled the peace movement in Guatemala. So it was the church that was involved in many places throughout Guatemala where their human rights were being violated. The same way we see in our neighboring country of El Salvador with Bishop Oscar Romero, who also was a beacon of hope and light, who spoke up against the injustices that were happening to our brothers and sisters in El Salvador. It's always been the church that has served as a breeding ground for justice, right? We see that in the civil rights movement, and that was an ecumenical movement. We've seen it all throughout our world where little lights, sparks of light, have created ripples effect that have changed the social spiritual trajectory of our world. We are becoming awakened. Our young people and our young adults, this generation is the most intelligent generation in the history of humanity. I really want that to sink in. With the technology that they have at the palm of their hands, with the world opening up and the accessibility of this much information, it's going to change the world. And the church has to change also, because it's necessary, it's needed, it's part of how we will sustain ourselves as a people of faith, by utilizing the tools that are around us, right? As the saying goes, the times have changed, but the message is still the same. We know God is the example given to us in many different expressions and cultures all over the world, be it Buddhism, Christianity, Judaism, Jainism, whatever. It's what one priest once told me, you know, the way to God as this massive ocean has many rivers that lead to it. I do believe that hip hop is one of those rivers. My faith as a Catholic, growing up Catholic, I still believe in the church, but we need to really change it up. One of the ways you can do that is support me by purchasing my book, Beyond the Four Walls, The Rising Ministry and Spirituality of Hip Hop. I use a lot of those funds to help youth organizations all across the country and the world, you know, to listen to our young people, you know, involve them, stop criticizing people. We need a church that's more welcoming, right? Forget about this whole idea that you're supposed to look, act a certain way. When we know Pentecost taught us very well that we all come in different flavors, different sounds, voices, social historical realities. This is the way I believe we can change our world, right? Young person, learn from the wisdom of our elders, but elders, learn from the liberational spirit and new ideas of the young person. Thank you. Peace.
How has hip-hop provided purpose into your life?
I mean, it's always been, you know, a part of the culture. You know, from way back to, you know, the motherland, they always was moved by the beat of the drum, and it was interconnected with spirituality.
I made the connection with hip hop because that was one of the overarching things that I felt in my life was connecting us all together. If Jesus was connecting people, what makes hip hop any different? You know, what is that ideal? What is that spirit that is bringing people together in that way? That's a phenomenon. And we really need to take time and really explore that further.
I think hip-hop is spirituality. It's the avenue through which folks get in touch with their inner selves. Hip-hop and engagement in hip-hop practices, whether you're emceeing or you're b-boying or you're doing graph, you do those practices to get to a point where you have a certain kind of euphoria and a certain sort of like escape from reality. And when you're doing it on the highest level, mentally, physically, you're in a different place. And that different place from the mental to the physical was the spiritual. So, you know, I always say that, you know, the more in depth you get into hip hop culture, the more in touch you are with the spirituality of the culture.
A young MC that was in the crowd at the University of Dortmund asked me, you know, is there spirituality in hip hop? And I said, absolutely. You know, that's what freestyling is really about. That's the philosophy that I come from, because what you're doing is a spontaneous interaction with what's around you and your experience, and letting that out and bringing it out and allowing it to be free. And when we talk about these ciphers, legendary ciphers, you know, yeah, there's individuals that are bringing their artistry in terms of what they've written on the page and performing and getting free that way. But what I know and understand is freestyle. And inside of a cipher, that means that whatever's around me and whatever I'm feeling in that moment, that's got to be represented in the rhyme. And it's that space that can be at times freeing. For some, it could be a form of self-care. It could just be simply the one opportunity that day where you felt like someone recognized you, saw you as a person, saw your spirit.
To the context of our objects, we didn't even Stephen Hawking on his blessing from the soul. Still waters run deep. Find me Jersey driving, riding low in the seat with a bad body, mommy, no spitting less teeth, like she graduated from a class of little
Hip hop is since the days that I was a kid. I started rhyming when I was like yay high, you know. So any problem that I had in life, I wrote it down. Any thought that I've ever had, I write it down. Any question I've had for the Creator, I write it down. It comes out in a song, you know. So hip hop is the way that I praise God, in my opinion. You know, the good, the bad. Like a lot of people, they give the devil too much power. The devil is a creation of the Creator, you know. So really, the Creator created everything. Your good thoughts, your bad thoughts, the good, the bad in the universe. So to me, it's just like the more you express everything that you think, everything that you feel, it's embracing what the Creator has put around you and what is put inside of you.
I feel like every time I'm writing a rhyme or I'm performing a record, I feel like just like my molecular structure may change. Like I feel different. I don't feel the same. My thought process is different. How I view the world is different. Super analytical at this point. I'm a much more critical thinker than I once was, and I can definitely say that. Super spiritual. I feel it.
People that have come to volunteer early, this is universal love. And let me tell you one more thing. When we started today, because we set the intention that it was going to be universal love, guess what happens? All types of crazy things that never happened to us happen to us. Like to try to deter us. We was like, move. We love. And I promise you, when you walk in love, you win. Yes. You win. Yes. Love, you win. Yes. So today, be beautiful, be love, be everything that you've ever wanted to be. And especially when they told you that you can't be it, today's your opportunity. Yes.
I would say that the hip hop culture is spiritual. I would say that the hip hop industry, not so much. For me, it is spiritual. I get it. Like I was saying earlier, right? Like it has helped me through it has given me a sense of understanding like emotional intelligence. Understanding myself, because I've had to write it out, which means that I have to tap into my spirit. And I see myself on paper, like it comes outside of me, and then I can hear myself when it's recorded, or I see myself on video. So I'm like, hip hop is spiritual because you're dealing with the spirit.